Kira and welcome back to another reading vlog. I am so excited for today's reading vlog because I'm reading a book that was very recently turned into a Netflix TV show, and as soon as I found out that that show was based on a book, I knew I wanted to read the book, and that book is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, aka the first book in the Bridgerton series. Now there are in total, I think 8 books in the Bridgerton series. I have them all. I ordered them immediately after watching the show, but I obviously have to start somewhere, and the first book is the obvious place to begin a series. So I'm really excited, slightly apprehensive, because whilst I love the TV show, like I'm pretty sure almost everyone that watched it, I've seen some very mixed reviews about this book. So I really don't know what to expect. I don't know if it's going to be the same as the TV show, whether it's going to feel very different, how I'm going to get on with the characters, but what I do know is that I'm very excited to find out, and I had to make a reading vlog for this one because I'm just so excited to see what this book is all about, because I love the show so much, and I'm hoping I enjoy the book as well, but we will just have to wait and see. Now, before I jump into reading and sharing all of my thoughts on this book, I wanted to bring back a little segment to my reading vlogs that I started in my December vlogs, and that was here's the tea, or essentially just a tea taste test section. And I felt like Bridgerton, being like a classic British Regency setting, just felt like the perfect reading vlog to kickstart Here's the Tea again. And I picked a tea that I think goes perfectly with this reading vlog, and that is this Yorkshire tea. Tastes like toast and jam brew. It looks incredible, and I felt like English breakfast tea with the taste of toast and jam. First of all, a really unique concept for a tea, and then second of all, I just felt very British, and I personally feel like a good match for this book. So without further ado, I have brewed myself some toast and jam tea. I brewed it a couple of minutes ago because I always find that teas with flavours tend to do a little bit better when you've left them to sit for a little while and they're not super hot, because I feel like when you try and drink them super hot, you can't really taste the flavour. So I've left this to cool for a minute and I'm going to give it a try. So without further ado, it does literally smell like toast and jam. It's got a bit of a malty and kind of toasty crumb smell, but then with a really berryish, strawberry, raspberry sweet smell as well. So I'm very intrigued and very excited. So without further ado, let's see what this is all about. Ooh, that is so nice. Wow. So basically, as you might have noticed from my December Here's the Tea sections where I was doing a tea taste test every single day because I had a tea advent calendar, I don't really like fruity teas because they tend to smell a lot stronger than they taste, and I'm always really disappointed. Whereas I think this one is amazing because you have a bit of a fruity flavour, but then you also have the English breakfast tea and the slightly toasty sensation coming through as well that kind of carries it, so you're not entirely relying on the berry smell to carry the entire tea. So you've got that combination of fruit, but also it's not completely relying on that, so it's kind of a more creamy version of a fruit tea, and I'm a big fan of this. So I'm gonna enjoy my tea and get started on reading The Duke and I. I'll catch up with you when I've done a little bit of reading. Okay, so it has been a couple of hours and so far this book is proving very quick and easy and fun to read because I'm currently on page 109, which puts me at about 1/3 of the way through this book. And so far I'm really enjoying it. It's fun, I'm connecting with the characters, they seem interesting, I'm invested in what's going to happen to them, and you know, that's kind of all I can ask for from a book, so really enjoying it. I'm definitely noticing there are a few differences between the book version and the TV version, which I guess is to be expected, but I always think it's interesting coming at it the reverse way round, where typically I would read a book first, but there are some occasions where you've never even heard of a book and then it gets made into a Netflix show, turns out it's incredible, and you obviously instantly want to read the book version, and that is obviously what happened this time around. So I'm kind of noticing some differences and some, you know, structural changes that are very intriguing. Some I like, some not so much. The first one being that I feel like we're definitely getting a lot more of the Duke in the book. Not that he's featuring in the story more, but I feel like it's a more balanced perspective. We have two main characters, the Duke and then Daphne Bridgerton, and I really do feel like there's a more balanced view between both characters' perspectives. In the TV show, I would suggest that Daphne is the main character, and this is very much told from a Bridgerton point of view, and the Duke is a main character in Daphne's story, whereas I feel like so far in the book, both characters are equally the main character, and they're just two individuals whose stories are converging, and I feel like it's a subtle difference, but one that provides a little bit more balance to the narrative, and I'm definitely enjoying that. It starts with a prologue focusing on the Duke's backstory and what's going on in his life, what has kind of shaped his life experience and worldview, and his particular view on marriage, which is definitely something that we get slightly later in the TV series, but it's nice to kind of start the book with that knowledge and then kind of go into the rest of the story with that framing your view, and I'm just enjoying seeing that slightly more balanced view between the two characters. Daphne, I've noticed, is definitely a slightly different character in the book than she is in the TV show, predominantly because in the TV show she is a young lady who's just been put out into society, ready to find a husband, and she is named as like the diamond of the season. So she's extremely beautiful, extremely desirable, and although a few things kind of go wrong in her courting experience that require a little bit more focus to try and find a good husband, she starts the season really strongly, whereas in the book we're finding out that she's actually in her 3rd season of courtship, and it's starting to become a little bit of a sort of source of contention between her and her mother in terms of actually finding a husband and making sure that she's married off before some of her younger sisters need to come out into society. So there's a slight difference there. Bless you, Gatsby, that's just my rabbit sneezing. So there's a slight difference there, I feel like, between the book and the show, just in terms of the dynamic of how serious it is for Daphne to find a husband, and sort of her seeming like a little bit less of a desirable character and someone who's kind of sort of sitting on the shelf. So that's definitely interesting, and Daphne's own words kind of suggest that she is seen as like, I guess, the Regency version of Not Like Other Girls, because she kind of describes herself in the way that she says, "I'm unmarried because everyone sees me as a friend. No one ever has any romantic interest in me." And there are other instances where various characters, including her brothers, kind of say that she's a great sport and that she's really fun and not like other girls, but to the detriment of her then being seen as a romantic prospect for any of the men who are looking for wives in this season of courtship. So that's really interesting, and of course kind of changes the dynamic between her and the Duke. Similar in the sense that, you know, they're both kind of doing each other a favour and trying to sort of, in Daphne's case, boost her status in society, and in the Duke's case kind of make him seem like he's not on the market for other women. But I feel like because Daphne has been out in society for a couple of years now, it makes her status a little bit more serious, and therefore the Duke's sort of rescuing her becomes kind of a little bit more of a split power dynamic where he's kind of helping her out more than she's helping him. So that's kind of interesting, and I'm definitely enjoying seeing that dynamic play out. Not really entirely sure why they changed Daphne's character in the TV show to make her seem like super desirable and, you know, like she is wanted by everyone, but either way, the main core of her character and the way that she acts is very similar. There's just some slight differences in like the, I guess, intricacies of what's going on with her and her courtship. One thing that I'm not loving is just that I feel like in the book we're not getting to know the other characters in the Bridgerton family quite so well. We've gotten to know a couple of Daphne's older brothers who know Simon and therefore are kind of like involved in their story, but on the whole I feel like whereas in the TV show you get to know this incredibly busy and close and tight-knit family dynamic of this really big Bridgerton family, in the book you know that they all exist but you're not really getting to know any of the other siblings quite as well, and I think that probably comes down to the fact that there are a book for each of the individual siblings, so we'll get to know them each in their turn, but I do think it would have been nicer to kind of get to see them a little bit more in the book. There is obviously still some time, but on the whole I feel like we're just not getting to know any of the other characters quite as well, but that's kind of fine. It's not a major problem. So far, really enjoying it, looking forward to reading some more, but I think right now what would be delightful is a hot chocolate, so I'm gonna go make a vegan galaxy hot chocolate and then do some more reading. Good morning guys, it is now the next day and I'm feeling very excited today for two reasons. The first one being completely unrelated to this vlog, but I'm just so excited about, is the fact that today is Tuesday the 16th of February and that is officially Pancake Day this year. Pancake Day is one of my favourite days of the year, every single year, and the fact that it's in February is so nice because February is otherwise a relatively bleak and unexciting month, but with Pancake Day it just becomes that little bit more exciting. So I'm not sure if Pancake Day is something that is done across the world or just in the UK, but essentially it is Pancake Day today. It's a day dedicated to pancakes. Everyone across the country will be eating pancakes today, and I'm very excited to get my hands on as many pancakes as possible because I love pancakes so much. So that is my first source of excitement for the day, and the second one, bringing it back to what this vlog is actually all about, is the fact that I'm planning to finish reading the Bridgerton book today. I'm currently on page 232, so I think I've got about 100 pages left of this entire book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I think I'm going to be reading this book this morning before I make any pancakes and listening to the soundtrack from the Bridgerton TV show, because it's a wonderful soundtrack, so beautiful, but it's also all like orchestral and string quartet and all of that kind of stuff, so no lyrics, which means that you can listen to it without becoming distracted from your book, which is wonderful. So that is the plan for this morning. I have of course read quite a bit of this book since I last spoke to you. I've read about another 100 pages and I have a few more thoughts to share. The main feeling is that I'm still really enjoying this book. It feels like it's moving faster than the TV show did, in the sense that the events of the book just seem to travel a lot quicker, and there's definitely a lot less focus, like I said, on the other Bridgerton siblings, but also just on the rest of society in general. I feel like Lady Whistledown's Society Papers and her like scandal newspaper is definitely a key part of this book, but it doesn't take up quite so much attention, and there also isn't quite as much focus on her writing about other members of society, and so it definitely focuses in on her portrayal of the Duke and Daphne and of the Bridgerton family in general, but there's a lot less focus and attention given to other parts of society, so I feel like that allows the book to travel a lot quicker, which is interesting in terms of finding out more and more about the two main characters, Daphne and the Duke. But I feel like I definitely enjoyed the sort of more rounded view of society that we got in the TV show, and it was fun to learn more about different members of society and the way that they're all interacting with each other. And again, I feel like that's potentially something that we're going to get built up gradually throughout the rest of the books in the series. So I'm not too mad about it, but it is definitely interesting to see that difference. But while I am really enjoying this book on the whole, I am starting to notice a couple of character discrepancies and a bit of inconsistency in terms of character development, which I feel like just makes it slightly harder to be fully invested in the characters. So as I mentioned before, Daphne is portrayed as this girl who is like friends with all of the guys, and she's therefore not seen as a romantic interest. So she's having this conversation with the Duke, and basically they're talking about a man and a woman kissing and all of that kind of stuff, and then Simon, or the Duke, basically says, "You should not be speaking of such things, you shouldn't even know about them." And then she says, "4 brothers. Well, 3 I suppose, Gregory is too young to count." And basically she's suggesting that because of her having so many brothers, she's much more knowledgeable about things than maybe other girls are, and she knows about things that maybe would be considered inappropriate for young ladies to know. And essentially she kind of portrays herself as a little bit more worldly and knowledgeable than other members of society. But then later on, after the marriage has taken place, Daphne and the Duke are of course having this conversation, and essentially Daphne is then talking about how she doesn't actually know how children are made, and essentially she's kind of just talking about the fact that she has a lot to learn. She's really embarrassed about how unknowledgeable they are, and she thinks it's wrong that young women aren't taught more about these things. So it's kind of a bit of a discrepancy where at one point she's meant to be this really knowledgeable character who knows about these types of things, and then later on, when it actually comes to affecting her, it turns out that she doesn't really know anything about them at all. And I feel like that character inconsistency isn't huge, but it definitely does make a difference to how believable the character is. And it's something that I definitely noticed that they covered up in the TV show, because they never had Daphne portrayed as this worldly, knowledgeable, friends with guys type character, and instead she's just this innocent young lady who doesn't know anything, and that is consistent throughout her entire character development. So a little bit inconsistent. On the whole, it's not really affecting my enjoyment, but it is just something that I noticed in my little reading session last night. But I'm now 232 pages in, about 100 pages left to go, and I'm hoping to finish it today. So let's do some reading. I've had such a great morning of reading. I'm now on page 306 of The Duke and I, which puts me at about 30 pages from the end of this read, so I'm almost done. And for the most part, this has proved to be a really fun, light-hearted and enjoyable romance that I think is just really nice and fun to read, and has made me excited to explore the rest of the series. However, it definitely has started to become a lot darker and maybe less enjoyable within the last couple of chapters, exploring some topics that are just a bit uncomfortable. Daphne and the Duke's relationship has kind of taken a bit of a nosedive, in the sense that there are sort of hints throughout their build up to their marriage that potentially this could be a not so great match, in the sense that they have very different opinions on having children. Daphne wants them, she's from a big family and loves children and wants to have her own, whereas the Duke definitely doesn't want children. However, he chooses to phrase this not wanting children to Daphne as that he cannot have children. So she enters into the marriage knowing that she loves him and that she'll support him and that he can't have children, believing this to sort of be like a medical condition of some sort, whereas actually it later comes to light that he simply does not want to have children and has phrased this in a way that essentially manipulates Daphne and takes advantage of her lack of anatomical knowledge about how children are actually made. And so of course that puts the Duke in the wrong. He's kind of taken advantage and has created this uneven power dynamic in this relationship at a time in history where the power dynamic between men and women was already quite split. So he's sort of already got the upper hand, being the husband and being in charge, and then he also has used his superior knowledge to take advantage of someone even further. However, then Daphne starts to figure out these things and then sort of flips the manipulation on its head and becomes the manipulator and engages in some really toxic and harmful behaviours, and this book definitely deals with the theme of male rape. And of course, dealing with that as a theme in and of itself isn't an issue, but I think where this book sort of stems into difficult territory is the fact that it doesn't necessarily really resolve the issue, and it kind of just uses it as a means to an end in terms of furthering the plot. And I feel like that is where it's an issue, because it of course could be discussed and could provide a platform to discuss this issue and to discuss the way that Daphne then manipulates the Duke in order to try and have children against his will, and that could provide like a really interesting plot line to explore that issue of morality and explore this toxic relationship. But actually, I feel like it just doesn't, and it kind of just skims over it. And there's even a section where, following the incident, Daphne specifically says she wasn't ashamed of her actions. She supposed she should be, but she wasn't. And then it also says she might not get another chance. So she's obviously just kind of like using the Duke, although she does love him. And I just feel like the author creates a really messy dynamic of morality in this relationship, where both parties have engaged in some really toxic and manipulative behaviours. And it's just a little bit difficult to figure out where you stand as a reader, because they just don't really dive into the intricacies of these problems and give them, I guess, the platform that they deserve. So I don't have an issue with the topics being discussed at all. I think books are a great place for discussing difficult topics, but I do think that this book kind of brushes over these topics in a way that then just uses them in like a dramatic plot furthering way, rather than actually giving them the discussion that could prove to be really useful and interesting and educational. So that is kind of where issues rise, and I just think it's such a shame, because Daphne and the Duke are, until this point, such a great couple. They are really compatible, they like each other, they seem to respect each other, and then just as there are some slight character inconsistencies with Daphne, it seems as though there's an inconsistency in this relationship, where suddenly where there was once respect, there is now none, and there's manipulation and toxicity instead. So I wouldn't say that this has impeded my enjoyment of the novel on the whole, but it is obviously important to read and discuss what comes up as the book goes on. So I still would say that I am enjoying this book and want to find out more, and I'm intrigued to see what happens to the other characters in the other books in the series, but I do just wish that this particular topic was discussed in a better way and a more rounded way, and was actually resolved and given the attention that it deserves, rather than just being used as a dramatic plotline. With that in mind, I think it's probably time to make some pancakes, and I'm going to finish the rest of the book and I'll catch up with you when I'm done. That's a wrap. I just finished up my read of The Duke and I, and honestly, I enjoyed this book a lot more than I expected. On the whole, it turned out to be a really enjoyable read, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. Had pretty low expectations for the quality of writing of this book, just because my mum basically said that it was nothing like the type of sort of books and the sort of author that I would usually gravitate towards, and I certainly don't tend to read much historical fiction, and certainly not much historical romance. So it wasn't within my comfort zone of books whatsoever, but I actually found myself being pleasantly surprised by how the characters were developed in this book, the way that we got to know characters, and it wasn't all about romance. Romance was obviously a big part, but it wasn't just about romance and fluff and steam and all of that kind of stuff. Like, there was a bit more depth to it, and I definitely found that I was invested in the characters, invested in their personal development, in the relationships they had with each other, and honestly, having now finished it, I'm really excited to see some of the other smaller characters get a bit more attention and development in their own books in the series, and I feel like the way that I have become invested in them is definitely testament to the fact that it exceeded my expectations, at least in terms of character development. Now, of course, it wasn't a bulletproof book. There were definitely flaws, as I've just explored when I was talking about how Daphne and the Duke's relationship kind of goes into some quite dark territory, and of course there were consistencies between characters, and I just found myself thinking that the way that they discuss the theme of male rape and of manipulation and toxic relationships was so brushed over that it just shouldn't have really been included, because I don't really think it furthered the plot. There were parts of this book where Daphne and the Duke resolved their differences in a completely different way that wasn't manipulative and wasn't toxic, and because of that, they actually didn't need those toxic bits at all. Like, they could have just done it without that. And there was even a section where Daphne herself says, essentially, I don't want you to do this just for me, it has to be for you too. And her ability to be intelligent and reasoned and to view the situation in that way is more in keeping with the Daphne that we get to know at the beginning of the book, and not the Daphne that kind of lapses in morality, in judgment and intelligence in the middle of the book. And I just feel like that middle of the book for both Daphne and the Duke is just a section of their characterization that didn't really need to be included, and if it was to be included it should have been better explored. But actually the way that their relationship concludes within this book kind of goes to prove that those sections didn't really need to be included. So it is just a shame, and that is kind of a bit of a issue with the book, and definitely brings down the rating slightly, not because of the discussion of difficult topics, but because of the way that those topics weren't really dealt with in the best way. Honestly didn't really match up with character development, and therefore caused even more inconsistencies, and ultimately just weren't particularly necessary, and therefore were just used as a dramatic plot device rather than for the actual discussion of an important topic. But on the whole, I enjoyed this book, I enjoyed the characters, I found myself invested in them. It was, for the most part, aside from those sections, a really light-hearted, fun, easy to read romance, and like I said, I'm still going to be continuing with the rest of the series. So I feel like this is somewhere between a 3 and a 4-star read for me, because it took me literally a day to read, which is always the mark of a good book, because I just didn't want to put it down, and honestly, I enjoyed it a lot. I know this one has got some mixed reviews, but for the most part, looking at the book as a whole and not just the bits that I didn't enjoy so much, it was enjoyable. And honestly, when I come to romances, I don't typically pick them up to be super critical. I pick them up to read something that's fun and light-hearted and easy, with characters that are nice and fun to follow along with, and I feel like for the most part this book definitely ticked those boxes. So that is The Duke and I, done and dusted. One down and quite a few others left to go. We have a lot of books left in this series, and if you have enjoyed hearing my thoughts on The Duke and I, and you'd like to see me talk about the other books and you want more Bridgerton reading vlogs, then definitely let me know in the comments, because I'm more than happy to oblige and make more Bridgerton content. But with that being said, I think I'll bring this reading vlog to an end. I really hope you did enjoy hearing my thoughts on The Duke and I. I found it really fun to compare this book to the TV show and just to dive into the source material and see what it's all about. But I'm definitely interested to see what it's going to be like reading the other books in the series now with no prior knowledge about what's going to happen to those characters. So if you enjoyed this, or you have any thoughts to share on Bridgerton, the TV series or the book, then definitely leave me a comment down below, because I'd love to chat about this series with you all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.